We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in the city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories, more people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay aligned with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in to In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in the city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories, more people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
we think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all these things, still the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay in line with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in to In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
Yes, indeed. IMHO Talk Show. Back like we never left. Sir Charles, Razor, Miss Max. In the booth, in the building. You can be anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we definitely appreciate it. Man, so we are on none other than the flagship station, 101 Jams, your home for hip-hop and R&B. Today's and the classics, and we are doing what we always do about this time, taking Seville to the world and bringing the world to Seville. Sir Charles and Razor here with you. Make sure you tell a friend. IMHO Talk Show. 101 Jams if you're local to us. We're streaming live and worldwide right about now. So, family, without further ado, if everybody's all buckled in, enjoy the ride. Because I am joined by two esteemed gentlemen right about now. I'm so happy that they obliged to our invitation. because we're talking about none other than City Manager Sam Sanders and also newly elected Mayor Juan Diego Wade. Gentlemen, happy Sunday afternoon to you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hello, hello. Thanks for allowing us to be here.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So you all know our show pretty well, right?
Yes.
Like you all know, in my humble opinion, like, you know, what we do is we definitely speak truth to power. You know, we use these airwaves to have real conversations. You know, nothing overly formal, but something for the community to get to know businesses, organizations, and in your case, elected officials. You know, just a little bit better, and you know, and be able to have this platform of communication is something that I'm glad that you all feel comfortable and trustworthy enough to join us as well. So we appreciate you once again.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So let's actually start with this, and both y'all can give your takes on it. Whoever wants to go first, and if that one answers sufficiently enough, you can feel free to pass. But I'm sure a lot of people don't know the definitions. A lot of people don't understand the collaboration that happens when it comes to your titles, your roles, as Sam as city manager, Juan as mayor. So let's start right there. Go ahead and break down to the people what it means to be the city manager of Charlottesville, to be the mayor of Charlottesville, and how those two roles intersect.
I'll let the mayor go first.
All right.
He's the figurehead of the city.
Yes. Thank you. So essentially the city council hires the city manager to run the city. We have to make some decisions, but we leave the day-to-day operation of the city to the city manager. But Charlottesville is a very relational, connected city. And when we're out there, you know, people come to us to ask questions and concerns and things. And so, you know, often now as mayor, I get a question, you know, they want to set up a meeting or something. They say, can you direct me to your scheduler, your staff? And I just have to laugh because it's me. It's I have a staff of 3, me, myself, and I. So, but
they're all busy.
Yes, yes, that's right.
You mean you didn't demand that in your rider? You didn't say, in
yes.
order for me to be mayor, I'm gonna need a window office. And
yeah, that sounds good. So I think that Lloyd Snook best said it when he says that the mayor is kind of the first among equal. That I help with the coordinating of the meeting, and a lot of times I speak on behalf of the city council. But we're all equal. We're not like Richmond, where they have a strong mayor form of city council and management. Where here we work with each other. We all are equal, and we work with Sam and other staff to implement our policy and our vision.
Sam, you want to answer that?
Yeah, I guess what I'll add is that it's helpful to even break it down so that folks really do understand that when you run into council members, you're asking them questions and they don't necessarily always have the details, but they know where to get the answers. The city manager's responsibility is really to run the city. I mean, all the mechanics, the operations of the city. So that is making sure that trash gets picked up, that streets get cleaned, sidewalks get constructed and maintained, that parks are running and operating as they should, that we are addressing various issues, public safety issues, all the many concerns that just really are how a city has its tick, how it is moving, how is it functioning. And then the council is setting the strategy and the vision. They identify the vision more than anything, and then they more or less prioritize what the strategies are. And then as the city manager, it's my job to implement their vision for the city. And they're elected by the people, so that vision is the people's vision.
Gotcha. Okay, I was just about to ask that as far as the like the role that the council comes into play and whatnot. So is it so when the mayor and the city manager sort of is, let's say, faced like with the vote and whatnot, does it ever come down to city manager and mayor airing out conversations, or is it always the council comes up with a decision and then there's times where the city manager then gets involved on passing something and give me examples of of what those things are. That once the council has something on the table, when the city manager gets involved.
Well, as far as I know, you know, we certainly look at staff, in particular the city manager, to provide information. But when we're up there, have to vote, press the button. When Madam Clerk tells us, we don't look to Sam and say what should we do. By that point, we should have all the information we need to make the decision. And I feel very well informed. The way I typically gather information is that I certainly listen to the staff report, read the staff report, and listen to the staff presentation, and I bring my knowledge to the table, and I make the decisions, and that's how I approach it. And I'm sure each council have their separate ways of doing it, but that's the way we do it. I think a good example would be the zoning ordinance that we just passed about 1 month ago. We had, for me, it was two involved years from when I was on council, but it had been going on for many years, and we all had various inputs from staff, from the public, from emails, from calls, and everything. And when it came to that vote, we had to make the decision based on what we thought was the best for the city. And we all voted for it, but it's been some decisions that we made where it was 4-1 or 3-2 or what have you. So and I think it's fine that from time to time we don't agree on everything.
Yeah. I mean, that's a democracy, right?
Yes, man.
Yeah.
And I would add, Charles, that I'm not a 6 vote. It's important,
that's important
for people
to clarify.
To understand that my politics are my politics. I am here to do a job to inform this council, provide them as much information about any issue that may arise, make sure that they don't miss certain aspects of the decision. It's not about me trying to sway one way or the other, because again, I'm not the elected official who was put on the dais to perform on behalf of the larger city, although I would say my opinion matters in that I can express it to them and share with them details about the various issues, and then ensure that they go to that dais with all the information that they can possibly have so that they're making the best informed decision.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. So speaking of which, we are, believe we are in a budget season. I think
we are.
Yeah.
That's what I'm working on every day.
Yeah.
I feel you. And I think that's what Juan was alluding to as well. And so let's kind of address that then, if you don't mind. So, what are the big budget items, and like how are they prioritized?
But I'll name them and I'll let you prioritize them. How
Yeah.
about that?
Deal.
See, look at that. Look at that. Look at that co-work. I like that.
Collaboration, that's for sure. So we have a number of issues of priority, a number of identified strategies, I should say. What's big for this year's budget, collective bargaining, comp and class, which is the reordering and payment of our employees, the compensation schedules for our employees, something that we've fallen behind on over the years. We have a lot in the climate, environmental world, so just climate action in general, transportation, as council is considering some decisions on alternative fuels for our bus fleet. Housing, affordable housing specifically as a global concept is really, really a big issue for us. Homelessness has a subsection of high priority, and how do we intervene in that space? And we'll always have those more normal topics that will always be in every budget cycle: public safety, recreation and culture, as well as how do we make sure that we're not missing out on quality of life matters for the larger community as a whole.
Gotcha. Now something jumped out at me though that you said as far as the first part about I believe you said a city employee.
Yes.
Fall behind that budget. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Sure.
That sounds like that could have got a little messy.
It's big and complicated.
Yeah.
It could have, but council made a decision. So again, I've had to remind some folks that council made this decision when the General Assembly made it possible for the state of Virginia to enter into collective bargaining for the first time. That basically means that employees can come together as a group and then advocate through a negotiating process with the government and ask for certain pay and working conditions. We're implementing that this year for the first time. It is a monumental task to get that done because nobody really has that background unless you've lived somewhere else or you've experienced it. So we've had to teach staff how to even face that, and we're going to have to teach our team afterwards once it's in place how to work with that. But the intention is really that the desire was for council to eliminate the longstanding issue of employees not being paid well, not being paid according to the market. Let's do our best to get our team to the level and standard they should be in comparison to their peers.
And I just want to add on to that it's, for this year's budget is going to be, really critical in this time because we also did, Sam mentioned the comp and class study because we did a review of every single employee of the city and we realized that we were behind in a lot of those positions as well. But we also have 3 units that are in the collective bargaining, the transportation, fire, and the police. And so we're going to be doing a lot of catching up. But as far as I know, there may be 1 or 2 other localities in the state, but certainly not a lot that's ventured into the collective bargaining. So we'll be, kind of again punching above our weight class in a lot of, in this area as well. But we want to be that role model. We want employees to be happy so that they can serve the constituents of the great city, at a very high level. So it is important to us. And for me, again, I can't, speak for every council, but I believe that, that they feel like education is going to be an important priority. The compensation, affordable housing, and the climate. Those are going to be things that we are going to be really focusing on. And also for me, I have also a strong passion of working with young people that have programs and things that impact our youth. That when we get the budget and have the presentations and things that I will be looking out for.
Yeah. And I know Reza has a question for Sam, but just before that, the like realistically, what do you think you can accomplish? Because I know out of everything that y'all said, a couple of things that I'm hearing the most, right, is that folks definitely are big on economic development, and you can lump affordable housing, within that, or whether it's local businesses being able to to flourish here, even when they don't have a lot of capital to start. And then I heard you mention education, so all that our school system faced in the city, like fixing the issues that may reside there. And of course, like the violence issue that thankfully, has been trending downward. But yeah, when you look at what's realistic in your prioritizing the budget, what are you tackling first? How are you approaching that?
So I think that we are going to get the budget. The state is still coming out with numbers. We're going to have to see how much money we're going to have to work with, and then look at those priorities that we mentioned, and just really just after through it. It's long meetings. It's a lot of meetings. It's a lot of information, and when it comes down to it, it's just the 5 of us are really going to have to make some really tough decisions. And we know that some people are not going to be happy with us, but it's just not going to be enough money to do everything that we want. And I know that people have heard over the last few years we've had a pretty robust surplus. I'm understanding that that's not going to be the case this year, and people will see as they get their tax notices here in the next few days. It's not going to be as high as I understand, but still an increase, but probably not as high. We won't have as much money to work with, but the needs that we have are really increasing. Charlottesville schools, we understand they're not going to get as much money from the state because they're looking at numbers now from the pandemic, which is lower, not just for Charlottesville, but for many other districts. And so we have to figure out if we're going to make up the money that they're not going to get from the state. And I remember from my school board days is that even if we did nothing at all, just the regular increase from healthcare and things like that is usually another $2 or $3 million without any new initiatives. So education is expensive. Those things like that we just going to have to, the 5 of us with input from the staff and the public, just going to have to figure out how we're going to do it. We're going to do it by April 12th. We're going to have an adopted budget, but what it's going to look like, I'm not sure yet.
Communication is key because, like, y'all know that's going to be hard. Like, that is hard. I'm saying is it, like in the present, for our listeners and whatnot, everybody's listening is because people look at Charlottesville, like, let's be completely honest, and they look at the wealth that's here, look at the cost of living that's here, right, and then to then say you may not have enough money for stuff. It's like communication is going to be key, and really explaining that to the public.
Yes, sir.
What I'll say to that is that while yes, there's a lot of money here, there are only so many ways that the government can access that money. So that's the reality of the situation, in that it comes through sales tax, meals tax, property tax. A person who has a whole lot of money may have a fine home, but I can only tax it once, and I can only tax it for the level of that home, not their bank account. So there's a disconnect in that sense that while there's a presence of those significant resources, those are not all available for the disposal of the government itself. And in that regard, there is a disconnect in how even the state calculates its formula, because the LCI, which is the formula that generates the money that produces an amount of funds for the school system, takes into account the wealth in your community, meaning the ability for the local community to cover what the state does not have to cover. In that regard, because I don't have access to those resources that we just talked about, that in itself causes us a penalty. It's punitive in a sense, because the expectation is that because that money is here, it's being spent differently here than anywhere else, and that doesn't really hold up to do that.
That's deep. So I believe Reza has a question for you.
Yeah, thank y'all for coming here, gentlemen. The question initially was for Sam, but both of y'all can probably answer this. All right, going back to what you just said about there's going to be less money. Y'all are already going to get questioned about what you're going to do about the homeless situation.
Yes.
How do you decide where you place the money? Charlottesville, because I'm not from here, I see that Charlottesville is focused on growth at this point, and a lot of the local localities send their homelessness here because y'all have resources that help people. But if you have to decide if you're going to put money into the homeless situation and you really don't have a A to Z plan for them, but it's easier to invest in the property to grow the city, how do you make that decision when the city is screaming, help the people that need help?
Sure. It's a good question. And I think there are multiple answers to that question, but I'll say that how do we decide where the money goes is council's decision from a prioritization sense. They have to tell me what the priorities are, and then I strike a balance in those priorities based on what they communicate, the level of concern, the level of interest in responding to this matter or that matter. And we've done that. We've done some work in trying to make sure that while they have a list of 9 things plus a commitment to JEDI, therefore 10 things, I've had to repeatedly say to them, and we need to prioritize those 10, because I can't put all the money in all 10 buckets at an equal amount. It's just impossible. But what I can do is I can make sure that something is happening in each of those buckets. What we need to figure out is what's your priority within each bucket. Let's make sure that we move your priority forward in each of the buckets, and no 2 buckets are the same. The affordable housing bucket for the city of Charlottesville is the biggest bucket. That's where we're spending the bulk of the money. The intent there is that that money should reach all rungs on the ladder, including those at the lowest, the 0 AMI, which are homeless individuals. And that is why recently you've heard that I've been working on trying to get this property on Avon Levy. And while it generated a lot of extra attention, it was simply to identify that priority for council. They want to make a dent in the problem, into the situation that forms that problem. I found an opportunity, and we now have to plan to that opportunity so that we don't have people missing that it seems like we're doing one thing and not another. I know that I'm a master juggler now. That's part of the job description. I have to do all things, many things all at once, which is why I have to have a good team to do that.
Mayor Juan, who
yes.
has your ear right now? If I just want to ask this one last question. Who has your ear? The people bringing money to the city or the people in the city that need the money?
So I mean, for me, because I've been pretty well involved and connected with the city for the last 35 years. On any typical day, I could speak with a person that's unhoused, that's been here for a week or a couple of years, or speak to someone who is considering a multi-million-dollar proposal. I have, it's not like one group. I'm happy to say that I have a voice in a lot of different communities. I hope that that's one of the things that makes me an effective counselor, because I just don't have the ear of one particular constituent. And so, and which I like, because all of that, comes into play for me when I am making a decision. I'm just thinking about yesterday. It was a Saturday, so it was a kind of a slow day. I only spoke with 4 or 5 constituents, and one of them was someone who's living in a community of color, traditional community of color here. They were really concerned about their neighborhood transitioning into more and more Airbnb, and how do they handle, what can we do about that? And I also spoke to someone else who's like wondering how this new zoning ordinance is going to impact their development that they're planning. And so that is all in a typical day, for at least for me, and I'm probably likely for other counselors as well.
Yeah, and I think the deeper, point to that question too is, out of all that you've said, is like what has the upper hand when it comes to what the city needs, because like you said, you can't, like you don't have enough to distribute funds to everything equally. So like, do you feel like, and this is for both of you, of course, do you feel like that the city is more in need of the economic development, or is it more in need to, you may say, spending money to help the current needs of the city?
So I'm definitely from the camp, because my day job, I do career counseling and I help employees and employers, reach their fullest potential. But one of the ways that we can provide the $10 million for affordable housing is by having a robust economic environment. And so we need to be able to make sure that we are enticing business to come, supporting our businesses. We just can't cut them off and say, well, we need to focus on this. We need to have that robust, and I see that every day. And for me, in my job, it ties in together because I'm working with many of those individuals from the Haven that are in Pacham with employment, helping them with their resume, helping them set up interviews, doing mock interviews with that. That is all that I do on a typical day with my job as a career counselor with Albemarle County. I help individuals throughout the entire region. I don't ask, them to provide residency. So it has to all tie in together in my sense.
Gotcha. Anything else?
Yeah, I would say that it doesn't have to be a choice, because both works. The economic development priority is how you ensure that you have a healthy city. A healthy city is one that is not stagnant. It's constantly changing, evolving, growing. It's those resources that come from the economic development work that actually funds some of the social work that needs to be done, the community work that needs to be done, the reinvestment, the redistribution of funds to help reach those that are looking for somebody to reach towards them because they can't reach as far on their own. And then the other part that's important is, if you take a look at the zoning ordinance and the integration of inclusionary zoning, we're teaching developers a priority that they don't always appreciate. And it's not a knock against them, because I know developers and I've worked one. I was one at one time. But the key for the inclusionary zoning aspect, where they have to include affordable units, is because we're telling them it's that much of a priority.
Okay.
Don't bring us a project that doesn't have affordable housing in it. And because we don't want to continue to just wait and see if you'll do it, now we're going to require it. For me, that's the government dictating to those around it This is how we want to operate. This is what we want you to be responsive to. And that's why I see that it's both instead of a choice.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. For the feedback, y'all. We're gonna take a quick break, but when we come back, we're gonna dive deeper into the housing and development. And we have online with us our partner over at Charlottesville Tomorrow, Erin O'Hare, and y'all probably know she's been doing great reporting on the Fifeville neighborhood, Cherry Avenue development is coming. So definitely want your perspectives on that as far as how it, how it affects the city and your plan for that. But family, stay tuned. We'll be back with much more from our city manager and mayor, Sam Sanders and Juan Diego Wade. Stay tuned, y'all. I am HO Talk Show.
I am HO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
I am HO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
I am HO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
I am HO Talk Show. Still here, still standing as promised. Razor, Sir Charles, and our friend Erin O'Hare from over at Charlottesville Tomorrow. We are here with City Manager Sam Sanders and newly elected Mayor Juan Diego Wade. So Juan, before we get back into the issues and the topics from our listening audience, let me ask you this about just the choice to become mayor, because as you said about 35 years of being involved in the city, in the community. Why was becoming mayor on the list of of next moves?
Yeah. Well, if you had asked me, I say 3.5 years ago, if I would be on council, I would probably said no. I'm happy on school board, but things change. And when I was elected to city council, I became vice mayor, and an opportunity came, among the five of us. And I just think that it was a good opportunity for me to step into that role. I felt like I had, I understood what to do and how to move forward. I'd been chair of the school board, and chair of other big organizations, and so it was my turn, and so yes. It's been 3 weeks, but it's like it's been like
For
dog
like
years.
three years.
Yeah.
Busy 3 weeks.
Yeah.
No,
It's about to get busier for sure.
Yes.
They would definitely appreciate you. Yeah, so there's so much more that we're going to address in family. Definitely tell a friend, and chime in. IMHO Talk Show online. You can comment with any questions or what have you that you would like to contribute to this conversation with your city manager and your mayor of City of Charlottesville. But before we switch gears anymore, though, let's go ahead and dig a little deeper into the housing and affordable housing and development conversation. Because like I said, I'm going to kick it over to Aaron O'Hare from Charlottesville Tomorrow. Because for those that don't know, Aaron has been doing great work that you can find on charlottesvilletomorrow.com. Aaron not only has been covering the Levi lot that the city manager Sanders was talking about in regards to possibly being a facility for the unhoused, but she also has been covering the Fifeville neighborhood on Cherry Avenue and the development that's going on there. It's led by PHA. So Aaron, I know we wanted some follow up from our city reps on how they think particularly that Fifeville development is impacting the city and what their hopes are for it. But I'll kind of kick it over to you to pose the question. Oh, are you muted, Aaron? Cannot hear you. Sure, we can't hear you though, Aaron. Either. Sorry about that. Oh, we have to work on it. So, hey, Razor, talk for me. Let's make sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Razor's coming through. So, Aaron, you may want to drop off and drop back on. I'm not sure. Nope, still can't hear you.
Well, Charles, let me ask.
And you're coming through the
question.
same channel as Razor, so we should be hearing you. Yeah, so maybe just disconnect the audio and reconnect it, or make sure your microphone is selected. But I'm sure you all kind of get the gist of the conversation. But I know Razor wanted to add something as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to jump ship till Aaron comes back in and we talk politics. On a personal note, because the two of you have ascended to very high positions here in Charlottesville, and you are men of color, you are Black men, do you feel a certain obligation to your Black community? I know we generally, so we don't get in trouble, we want to call everything a minority and group everybody together. But just as Black men, do you feel any type of responsibility to develop things for Black men in your tenure while y'all are working?
You have a big brother complex.
Well, I've been a big advocate of mentoring for, since my time at Norfolk State University, and I've carried it out over here. And I still, even though this commitment of city council for me is a good 25 hours a week, I still think it's important that I mentor, some of the young men that I had started to. I think that is the biggest impact that we have. And the question is, I do see an obligation there. I have many requests to give graduation speeches already in this capacity. I've already been to Beaufort to speak to students. I plan to go to Keys Academy in the next few weeks, and so I do see an obligation. I think that I want to be in the space of being a Black leader. The importance of that. I know when I was growing up in Richmond public schools, for someone to come and speak to me in different schools and things, what it meant. And so I have that ability now, and every opportunity that I can, if I can fit it in my schedule, I will do it.
Thank you for that.
And what I'll add to that is I'm Black. I'll never forget. As long as the mirror exists, I'll always see it. But I know who I am, and I know what I've been doing, and I know what I will continue to do. Mm-hmm. For me, the answer is absolutely. It's a part of what I have to think about because I can't not see the impacts of those of us who have not been able to make things work for us and or receive a fair shake and a fair opportunity to do the things that some of us have been able to do. So for that reason, when I'm doing my work, I'm always looking for that angle. What is an additional approach to reaching down and reaching out and reaching to, building that bridge. So a lot of the work, especially the initial work, because I've only been city manager for 6 months. People forget that. I've been around for 2 years beyond that, but I've only been city manager for 6 months. Most of the times that I am looking at what it is that we're doing, I'm looking with that lens in mind as well. So we've been talking a lot about hiring and not being able to fill our positions. One of the things that I've been talking with our HR director about is how do we look at the minimum qualifications for positions? Are we actually setting up barriers, unnecessary barriers to people being able to get a job with the city, and how that causes us to not even be able to do a good job, but yet we have individuals capable of doing the job. They may just have an issue here or there. So we're looking at that. We've created some trainee program positions already, and I plan to do more of that. In economic development, I'm asking questions about how are we reaching the various individuals that are not the average person in economic development, the Black individuals, Black-owned businesses, some of the women-owned businesses, minority-led businesses as well. When I walk the mall, I recognize that there are not many Black faces on that mall. I have a concern about that. I've been talking about that. And in the downtown mall committee conversation we've been doing for the past year, I keep bringing it up. So for me, that's how it displays in the work that I'm doing, is that I never lose sight of it, because I'm always asking that specific question when we're doing the work.
That is definitely important here, because I was going to ask that precise thing. When you talk about, faced with that sort of contrast, right? Of like the Black community and it having a history here, and them trying to hold on to that history, that community, that sense of,
right.
But then you have developers. Let's be totally honest. You have some developers that come in that want to repaint Charlottesville,
and that's everywhere. It's everywhere. But yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And part of what my point to them has been, because I've talked to some of them and they don't necessarily like me either. You need to think about what you're doing, and you need to come with a better proposal. And your proposal needs to include the things that you're hearing these folks talk about, because they're not going anywhere. You might not be able to get done what you want to do, but they're not going anywhere. And I think it's important for people to appreciate that and not try to bulldoze through some of these things.
Yeah, I got to ask, because you brought it to mind. Have you all found examples, like successful examples of how you could have a very historic city and community, but they work with, let's say, culturally sensitive developers? And like for cohabitation of development alongside.
Well, I mean, it's hard. I'm not going to try to paint a picture that is very easy and it's very commonplace, because it's not. But all around the country, there are developers that are doing better versions of their developments, where they're signing community benefits agreements with the residents that they're doing their work in, to make sure that those folks are on the same page with them. They talk to them. They are consulting them before they even put a plan together, so they don't insult them. They consult them. So I think that's what we're trying to impress upon some of the developers who are here locally, is that that's what it appears that the public is asking for. And I know 5 people who keep saying that is what we're asking for. So as I've talked to some of the developers, I remind them, don't lose sight of that, because your project might not make it.
They do. Aaron, can we hear you? We still can't hear you.
I want to hear from Aaron.
I want to hear from Aaron too. I don't know what's happening here.
So I'll
this usually works with Aaron. I'm sorry, Juan.
No, I'll chime in on that Cherry Avenue project. I think that's something that she was going to ask about. And I would just say, when I was in grad school from 88 to 90, I actually lived in that court. I actually lived in the house that's right behind the corner restaurant. So I shopped at that grocery store that was there. I was really excited when this proposal came through, where you would have housing, community space, a grocery store, a place for nonprofits, and the most important part of that is the way that the developer and the community work together. And it took them, I understand, 1 or 2 years to do that. So they put in the work, and it's ironic because when the night or the week that we heard that. We heard from another controversial development where the developer did not get that robust community input. And we had many people come and speak in opposition to it from the community.
Right.
And then I can't remember if it was the same meeting or the next night, but it was definitely the same week. We had this project where we had pretty much 90% of the community come out to speak in support of it because the developer and the community and PHA had done the work to get community buy-in.
Mhm.
And that's the difference in how and to me it's the blueprint of how to get things done. It's still a lot of work to do with this project,
Mhm.
but they're way ahead because I feel a high degree of confidence that it what's the people want. When Miss Wood came and spoke for it, I was like, okay, that's going a long way, and that I think the community support it.
Yeah.
And so I think that a proposal like that, where we're going to kind of tie that in with the Cherry Avenue corridor
Mhm.
and other concerns that we have in our community, that's going to be a really desirable community. But also, we know things that's on the radar that I mentioned earlier. That the call that I got yesterday from a resident who's concerned about their neighborhood turning into an Airbnb
Right.
kind
Right.
of.
Right.
It's in our neighborhood too. So when you make things really attractive, because when I was
Mhm.
in grad school, and I didn't go to grad school with Thomas Jefferson, it was,
Mhm.
it was in the late 80s.
Mhm.
I was told, coming that this was a really tough neighborhood, but I came from Richmond. I didn't think it was any
Right.
tough
Right. Right.
neighborhoods in Charlottesville, and now the Fifield and 10th and Page, we know that those are more the highly desirable neighborhoods
Mhm.
to live in. So it's really changing. So we need to make sure that, and it's going to be part of the things that's on Sam's work list, is that
Mhm.
when we study these neighborhoods, what can we do to preserve it, to do what we do to make it, diverse and special. That's it all has to tie in together. So I'm looking forward to getting more information about this the Cherry Avenue proposal. I'm excited about the affordable housing aspect of it,
Mhm.
the grocery store aspect of it, in conjunction with Tonsler Park, which I we're doing a Parks and Rec study now that I know there probably will be some changes there. So it's exciting what's happening in that corridor.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you. And are you all cool sticking with us through the breaks? We're up against the hour.
Sure.
Yeah, and then we'll wrap up.
And Charles, if you want to tell Erin,
Yeah.
if she emailed the questions, I have my she knows how to get me, so she can send those emails to me right now. I'll happily read them and answer.
We'll do. And family, likewise for y'all. Go ahead and comment with any questions or additions to the discussion that you have for the city manager and city mayor. But stay tuned and tell a friend. We'll be right back.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people
All right, Erin, can you hear us? We can't hear you.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in the city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories, more people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all of these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue especially black men, are portrayed by the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay aligned with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in to In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
Hey, Sarad, I see you on here for a test. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, yeah, we can hear you. Aaron, I don't know. All right, thanks, Sarad.
Yes, I can hear you. Cool.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so it works on my phone.
I am HO Talk Show, Sir Charles Razor. In the booth in the building with your city manager, Sam Sanders, and your city mayor, Juan Diego Wade. So when we left off, y'all, we were in the throes of the housing conversation. So Sam, I had already heard you mention talk about Aaron was covering the potential property he could purchase for about $4 million. Is that right?
Right.
And then she's also a part of the Fifield development. So it's a couple of things that Aaron had mentioned. And Aaron, I see you reconnected again. I don't know if that's any better.
I'm trying on my phone. Is this better?
We got you,
Yeah.
Aaron.
Okay. Yay.
We hear
Hello
you
at
loud and
last.
clear.
Well,
Yeah.
now I can't even see the questions I sent in the chat.
I'm sure you got to memorize.
I know. I have them written down in like 5 places. But yeah, this is pretty much how my whole week has gone. But thank you for having me on and thank you for your patience.
Oh, yes, indeed.
So I remember back in, what was it, November already? CIM hosted the Can I Talk to You Seville conversation about housing.
Mm-hmm.
And which is online and available for folks to watch. And if you're interested in housing in Charlottesville, I highly recommend that you watch it.
Yes, indeed.
And Sam was part of that panel. And during that conversation, Sam, you brought up the community benefits agreement between the Fifield Neighborhood Association, Piedmont Housing Alliance, and Woodard Properties, which is a private developer, as an example for how future developments could happen in the city. And I'm just wondering, the city now has this inclusionary zoning ordinance where developers have to include a certain amount of affordable housing. There are incentives to build more of it in the development of certain sizes, et cetera. But I feel like that there's so much more that has to happen before like a community benefits agreement can even, happen. And it's really like for a private developer, you can't just tell them they have to do that, right?
Sure.
So like what are the things that the city can do to encourage these types of agreements and conversations to make sure that the neighborhood is heard and is involved in these kinds of developments, period, I guess.
Sure. So what I'll say is, thank you for the question. I think it's good to be able to further explain that just so that people understand how they work. A community benefits agreement is really more of a natural type of arrangement and a negotiation, agreement, discussion. It captures the discussion that occurs with the developer and members of the community that are interested and sometimes concerned. They can be interested and be positive, but interested and sometimes concerned about how different the neighborhood might be from that development. But the best way for them to be used is that they're mutually agreed to. They're signed by both sides. So that basically says what you're going to do, and then we're going to be able to see that you do exactly what you said you were going to do. There's no teeth in them except that the government can ask, is there one? And review that and consider that existence as a demonstration that there was engagement of the community. We do have in our development process that there is engagement of the community required. It doesn't necessarily require an agreement to result. The agreement is more of a best practices tool. It's what affordable housing nonprofits across the country, I used to run one, have all tried to push for, to try to encourage developers to do it in the right way. Don't come and bring your development to a neighborhood. Let the neighborhood also be a part of what you bring to them, so that they too can see it, appreciate it, feel it, touch it, and even experience it. The thing about the agreement that I saw, the agreement process even was Fifeville, was that all the parties that needed to be at the table they stayed there, they went through a lot, they talked about a lot. And we did have the mirror conversation going where that was not the case. And it turned into a very interesting public meeting that I was able to see and react to and was bothered by, because it felt as though, how can we do this in a place where we know people are going to be vocal about whatever it is that they may not like? I think the community benefits process is probably it is a model example of how to do it, because it ensures that you get that feedback from the neighborhood.
And one of the things, thank you for that. One of the things that was brought up, as well, that people saying that they want more affordable housing, and not necessarily just
any house,
like a skyscraper apartment. Yeah. So how does that go into the plans? Because of course, properties for houses means more money, blah blah blah, more acreage. Like when you hear that comment, though, like where does your mind go when it comes to development, affordable housing versus apartment?
And that is that's the quality of the conversation. It's to go in all those different places. When you talk about, do you want it to be so tall and it just peers over the neighborhood? Part of the conversation is, so what can you do to soften that? What can you do to make that a little bit different? Architects are very creative individuals. That's why they have degrees. That's why they do what they do. If you give them a task, they'll figure it out. So that is a moment of clarity from the community to the developer. Take it back to your architect and tell them to come up with something creative. Tell them to make sure that this wall is not the wall that I see out my front door. It's 5 stories tall when I walk outside all of a sudden. I can live with 2 or 3 if you do some things to it. And an architect is responsible for turning it into something that works.
And do y'all feel like that you have the leverage to say no? Like, I'm curious about that. Those conversations, like, do you feel that you have the strength to be like, hey, well, like, this is what our city needs, and we'll find another developer if need be, or let's be honest, like in this game, not just for Charlottesville, you see it in different cities. Like, do the developers kind of have an upper hand in some way?
Well, at least for us, we know that what we can approve, some things are by right, and they can do A, B, and C because we've passed a zoning ordinance, whatever. But a lot of times they want to do a little bit extra, do something different, and when they do that, we have the ability to say, well, if you want to do that, if you come into us, then we can say that maybe there's some things that we would like to see if you want those extra floors or extra units. And part of the previous discussion that y'all had, you and Sam just in, is that what I'm finding out is that what is defining affordable housing, it's so many different, levels of that. Someone mentioned the 0 to, AMI, which those are unhoused in our community.
Right.
And it can go all the way up to 80%, which, almost at market value, or a little bit cheaper. So it's really how you define it. And that has a big play in how you, how their finance it is when they are working with their financial institution. So I'm learning a lot more detail on this as each project that I work on.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you missing. Yeah, because the income ratio and that disparity it's almost unfair to just look at it from from an AMI perspective.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe.
Yes, sir.
Hey, we're talking. Let's talk in-house for a second. Where are we at with the collective bargaining agreement that we had with the school bus drivers and the K-Tech property? Like, we're talking a lot about housing from people coming into our community, building things. But where are we at with the things that we need to deal with in-house?
So we separate collective bargaining and K-Tech. So let me take K-Tech because it's quicker and easier. So K-Tech was funded as an acquisition. City paid for the acquisition of the building, thereby buying out Albemarle County. So now K-Tech is 100% owned by Charlottesville City Schools. They're still working with Albemarle for the spaces that they occupy and coming up with a long-term vision for what it now means for it to be a CCS property and project to manage from that point on. So that's separate. As it relates to collective bargaining, the city has permitted 3 bargaining units: police, fire, and transit. Transit includes school bus drivers. All 3 of them have been at the negotiating table with the city negotiating team. So that's our staff and legal representatives working to the development of a contract. So it'll be 3 separate contracts. The goal is to get those done as soon as possible. They each come with their own price tag. And the goal is to be able to work those into the FY25 budget. So council will approve and then I will sign. And then they go effective July 1 of this year.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And to piggyback on Razor's question, what about anti-displacement measures for folks who already live here but can see maybe being squeezed out as so many folks already have? I feel like maybe collective bargaining kind of plays into that as well. But I've heard some rumblings about an anti-displacement working group for the city. Can you give us folks an update on kind of where the city is thinking on anti-displacement measures right now?
Yeah, I can chime in a little bit with that. That was a big discussion when we were working on the zoning ordinance. What would that look like? And it was, with some proposals there that maybe, if you live in these certain neighborhoods, you couldn't sell your house for a certain time, but we didn't want to go down that route because if you're a person of color, you've been living in there 40 or 50 years and someone came to you and offered you $1 million or whatever for your house, we don't want to say you can't take advantage of the generational wealth or whatever that others are. And so we didn't want to put that in. We'd say, we just need to take some time to study how we're going to implement this. And that's some of the things we're going to be doing this year or in the future. It's a really difficult thing to legislate or to put policy or to regulate something like that, because no matter what you do, you're going to be impacting someone's the way they can use their property. So it's really difficult, and it can have both negative and positive impact. So it's real difficult, and so we want to be really judicious as how we impact that. I don't know, Sam, if you want to chime in more with that.
Yeah, what I'll add to it is anti-displacement. There is no one magic bullet. That's the unfortunate thing. If there was just 1 or 2 things that council could dial up, put them into play, and that in itself ends it, then it would be great. That doesn't exist. And really what it is a series of things. And I think that's the test for the city government, is to figure out how many different things can we deploy that are all intended to leave room for those with less resources. That's really the test. That's the goal. That's the mission. So we have what we're referring to as an affordable housing toolkit. It is meant to be a series of housing related things that the government can consider doing. Actually, on the 5th of February, during the work session for council's meeting at that time, we will be presenting that affordable housing toolkit in the concept of what are all the different things. If I remember correctly, there might be like 23 different things that we could potentially do, all in the vein of trying to make sure that affordable housing remains a priority. We're doing what we can to preserve and protect units, and that we're also producing as many more units as we possibly can. And it just demonstrates that it's ongoing work. A land bank is an example of that. That's a topic that people have been bringing up more and more lately. A land bank is a resource. It doesn't just kill all the issues. And this is a small community. We have a small footprint. A land bank can only do so much. But there are a number of things. We have a rental assistance program that the city is doing that it runs alongside CRHA's voucher program. There are many communities that would never touch something like that. I think it's amazing that we do that, and to the tune of the money that we spend doing it. So it's really, it's global. It's doing a number of things all at the same time, and all of them have an impact. So then you have a more collective impact.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Sam, how do you do affordable housing without turning it into a project?
Say that again.
Good question.
How do you do affordable housing without turning it into a project? Because the last few things that you said sounded much like the things I heard in the major cities in like the 80s and the 90s.
Sure.
And they ended up ultimately turning into projects.
Well, what we also are talking about is mixed income opportunities. So if you don't congregate the same income population, then you won't turn it into a project. But the key to any development is property management. I will always say that, and I've been saying that more and more because I know that to be the truth. If you manage the properties well, that means you'll keep the standard that you set upon construction, and that's what you can protect and preserve the opportunity for those who live there.
Now, what does the data say in regards to the homelessness and the unhoused, whether they maybe folks that get displaced and whatnot? Like when it comes to how you would like to budget for it, because like the 4 million as for shelters is one thing, but I imagine that had to be linked to conversations about, hey, like we need to think ahead of the game on like how, whether it's the development or whatnot, may be impacting again, whether it's displacement or the unhoused. So I'm just curious, like the data you may be looking at, and like when it comes to the city setting aside money, because the 4 million is just one building.
That's right, and one opportunity.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually even not a building.
That's right. It's not even that. It's a concept right now.
Site.
Yeah, and I would say for something like that is that we've expressed to the city manager, we as city council, and he has expressed it as one of his priorities as well, is that we want to do what we can for those that are unhoused in our community. We see them on the downtown mall. We see them need on Potcham this time of year, and when for a city that's 10 square miles, when an opportunity like this comes up, you have to try to take advantage of it, just like it did with K-Tech. You just don't get those opportunities. And so now, if we do decide to proceed with the purchase of it, it's not like we're going to start building next year. We need to have a public input process, because we have already heard from the neighbors that, not that they're against it or for it, but they just want to make sure that there's a public input process so they can know what's going to be there. And we're committed to hearing what the public wants to be there, but we have to get the property first, and then we could decide to do something else with it. But it's in this community, we have to have public input process, whether it's required or not. They demand it, and I'm glad that they do.
Yeah, thank you. Now we are up against time, but I want to make sure that you all chime in on a couple of other questions and comments that we had from some listeners, in particular, like your takes on public safety and like what's needed in regards to I know Razor kind of mentioned shortages when it comes to transportation and stuff, but that leads into the question about the schools. Like when you just think about the resources that the city maybe can provide to the schools to solve some of the issues that we saw that we've seen popping up, particularly within the last school year at the high school, for instance, whether that be teacher shortage or whatnot. And then the public safety kind of feeds into that, because a lot of folks, kind of said there were community issues being brought into the schools. So like, we'd love your take on that sort of, dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, you can't have things happening in the neighborhood and they don't find their way in the schools. That's always a concern, and vice versa. It could pop off at school and then go into the community as well. The key is to really try to have a pulse on what's happening, have connections. I believe our chief has demonstrated that he is not afraid of any neighborhood, any person. He goes into the neighborhood, he's hanging out, talking, getting to know. He's bringing officers along, trying to help them do the same. I think that's the message that we want to instill in this police force, that they need to be engaged with the public and be willing to receive and hear everything that they may have to say, and then use that as motivation for better relationships. The other part of it, I think, is just to be sure that when we hear from schools administration and they communicate to us what it is that they need, that we do our best to be responsive to that. Make sure that there's a relationship between the superintendent and the police chief and Commonwealth attorney, for that matter, because all these different things come together. But to ensure that we're actively working to not have the problem. I mean, we want to respond to the problem, of course, but we also want to do what we can to ensure that those things don't happen in the first place. And we've got to work on programming for our youth. We keep hearing that as a part of the various issues, as it was tied to our rash of gun violence issues that we kept having at one point. and these are young people in the schools. So we've been looking at what are we doing? Are there more things that we could do within our human services and social services departments? Those are questions that I posed to my team. And then in talking with the superintendent, I went to the high school, toured the high school with him, let him tell me what it was that he felt priorities were. And those have now been integrated into the ask that they are proposing for their budget. So then it becomes an issue for council to reconcile with me on how do we budget all the different things that are going on.
Got you. And it makes me think of the county too.
Yeah.
You know, it's like because city is landlocked. It's landlocked.
So you gotta have a relationship too. And that is a high priority for me, is to keep the conversation, keep the doors open, keep the lines of communication open, because how Charlottesville goes, so goes the county.
Yeah. Juan?
Yes, I just wanted to chime in with that. Of course, I'm a 33-year employee of Albemarle County. So, and Lloyd and I, and now Brian and I, are meeting on a regular basis with the chair and the vice chair of the Board of Supervisors, and many of them I had longstanding relationships with before I got on council. So those type of communication lines are very open now, and we use them all the time for different projects and things that come up. And I think that's very important as a community like this, where everything is really connected, but legally we're separated.
And talking about the same things, homelessness, housing, those are all issues that overlap very easily.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Hey, fellas, y'all might can't answer this. And Charles, I know we're right up against Al, but
I was going to ask you what your last question was.
All right.
Yeah, I'm coming now. In my humble opinion, Albemarle is not doing their part. They are allowing Charlottesville to take all the blunt of it, and they skirt out there and they get the spoils. I don't know if Charlottesville can make Albemarle more inclusive. So that goes all the way to the mountains. So we're talking about Western Albemarle too. We're talking about Monticello. But it seems that any problem that goes noticed, it's put on Charlottesville, and they don't have any skin in the game. That's my own, and that's not talking about the people. That's talking about the system itself, the way they operate.
Yeah, and that's representation too. We have Aaron on here. You know, it's like when the city school has a problem, it's like national news, but then it's like because it's the city of Charlottesville, it gets different attention. And
Well,
you're right.
I would add UVA too, right? Like they're part of our community as well, and they're also
only when they
part
want
of
to
this. Well, right, which is the
you definitely got to add UVA.
Right?
Yeah,
like we have a 3-pronged kind of culture in a way here. Like they're not culture, that's not the right word, but like it's Charlottesville, UVA, Albemarle County. You know, what are their responsibilities that they all have to one another? And because you can't extract one from the other in the way that we live, right? Like they're all kind of tangled in. I'm thinking of like a rubber band ball where everything's overlapping and stuff. So that's another question,
and I think
right?
it's a perfect note to end on. If you all wanted to kind of give your sort of, I guess, last words to to the community when it comes to that vision of us all working together to move Charlottesville forward. And we got to get Mike in here too, Mike, because I know Mike wants to tax UVA, and I'm with it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I just I agree, and I think that and I forgot who said it just a few minutes ago, just that it's not the people, but actually it is the residents of Albemarle can demand or request that their leaders, help address the unhoused problem, the climate problems and things like that. They, and I know them, that they listen to their constituents and to, to work with the city or in the university together. So they do have a say into it.
And Razor is always trying to get me to be a politician, so I have to resist that, not get myself in trouble. But I get what you're saying. Everybody has a role to play in it. We are one community in that sense that no one distinguishes, except people around here, distinguishes Albemarle County from Charlottesville. They just say Charlottesville, period. So we should care about that. We should recognize that as parents are looking to send their kids to UVA, they're evaluating Charlottesville just the same. They all go hand in hand. Working together is how we fix some of the longstanding issues that have persisted in our community. And And I think we all are dealing with some of the same stuff. We may not always in the past have talked about it as much as and as openly as we needed to. And of course, there are triggers and levers that are being pulled with who has the power and all that type
Of
stuff.
course.
But I think it's important that if you have the right people in the room and those individuals who aren't afraid to say what needs to be said, like myself, then you tend to get somewhere different than you have in the past.
That is awesome. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Thank you for your time. And I'm sure folks can go to the city website to see how to reach you if they have more
Absolutely.
follow-up. Yes. Yeah, thank you for for being open doors and always willing to engage in the community. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you all.
Yes, indeed. Family, y'all stay tuned. We got to hit this break, and then we are going to come right back with none other than Joseph Patterson, a Teacher of the Year awardee. He is a teacher over at Charlottesville High School, also helps with the night school, the after school for the Charlottesville High. So don't want to miss it. Going to dig even deeper with him when it comes to our youth and our educational system. So you got Sir Charles, you got Razor. All right, family, stay tuned. Don't want to miss it.
Thanks, y'all.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in this city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories, more people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay in line with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in to In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
HO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
HO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
I to the ism, H to the Izzo Talk Show. Sir Charles Razor.
Yeah.
Yeah, back like we never left. In the booth in the building with none other than Mr. Joseph Patterson. And he is he was awarded a Teacher of the Year award, and he is employed over at City of Charlottesville High School. Your one and only high school in the city of Charlottesville, may I add, because that is very important. That's very important.
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed. And so Joseph, thank you for joining us. Good sir.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you know,
Good to be here.
Yes, indeed. And I must say, you know, I wanted to start this by saying, you know, I appreciate you accepting the invitation, because, you know, like just myself being at the school and like seeing your interaction, it does my heart a you know, great joy, because some of us, you know, may come volunteer and whatnot, like, but for you to have the full-time duty and responsibility of taking care and being a model for our young Black men in particular. Now, of course, all students, every, you know, race, age, and what have you, but to see a strong Black male presence, I, you know, can't applaud you enough. So, you know, so thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Are you Joe Clark with the dreads?
Hey, some days I feel like I want to be Joe Clark.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
We need a little Joe Clark energy.
No doubt, no doubt.
So now for the folks that don't know, like, did that award come to you as a surprise? Give us a little background on the process. Like, did you have to be nominated, or was it by the teachers, by the students? Like, give us some background on that.
Yeah. So. To be quite honest, I mean, I think a lot of people who saw there's a video on Facebook, you know, that was shared with me receiving, you know, the notification of the award. And so my whole face, I was completely shocked.
Yeah.
And it came from the teachers.
Oh, okay.
So
Awesome.
you know, the teachers selected, nominated me, but yeah, I was completely shocked. As you can tell by my face, because the lady I work with, Holly Faulkner, I think they ran in the room and told her, like, right before they was going to make the announcement. So she was recording, and I looked like what is this? What's happening? But yeah, I'm super grateful and honored to represent.
Yeah, that is awesome, man. And of course, for, you know, I can imagine for the teachers to know that you would be the one to recognize, like, that means that they see your impact on the students. Like, so what does it mean to you?
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, you know, and this is what I tell people, like, flat out, you know, I tell them, I don't have to wait, you know, to receive the award, because I do Teacher of the Year every year. You know, I do Teacher of the Year. In my engagement, in my interactions with the students.
I like that.
And so, you know, to receive, you know, the recognition, not that I have to receive it, or not that I'm working to receive an award, you know, I take it and I wear it as representative of the hard work that we do every day.
Yes, indeed.
That you know, the 110% that we bring every single day.
Yes, indeed.
I grew up in Orange County. I never had a Black male teacher, right? I had one person, Mr. Carter, who was in charge of the bad kids, right? down the end of the hall when you got sent to in-school suspension, right? How difficult, I'm gonna just say it, how difficult is it to see our young males that don't appreciate the fact that they have a Black teacher educating them?
So I think, so to that, most of the students that I get, I'm the very first Black male teacher that they ever had.
Right.
And oftentimes I'll probably be the only Black male teacher that they'll have from their time in compulsory education. Part of it though, this is the issue, because oftentimes even sometimes with the white teachers, they'll say, well, you're Black, you can connect with them easily because you're Black. Part of the issue though is those Black kids, they are checking me at the door in the beginning of the school year. They want to know, are you Black enough to really understand the struggle, or have you been too whitewashed to really, and disconnected from our struggle? So they're asking questions. Have you even gone to college? Like the kids are asking me.
Right, because most times you're a substitute.
Right. Have you even gone to college? Do you have a degree? Do you have teacher license? They critique everything from head to toe. What are you wearing today? So everything is checked. And so even after that, then they have to, like, when they see the obstacles and the things that I've overcome, oftentimes it's so far, out of their reach. So they kind of see it as hope, but sometimes it's also outside of their reality to be even, obtain some overcome the obstacles that I did as well.
Absolutely, because you got to remember, Charles. Charles enlightened me to some stuff years ago, right? The fact that you come and you speak with a dialect of education. That disconnect will come because sometimes we have to talk with slang, we have to cuss, we have to let our pants hang so that we feel accepted. Even though that might not be the child that we are internally or want to be. So how do you find the ability? Charles did it with me. I didn't know how to look, real talk. When I started being on boards and stuff, I called Charles to figure out how to dress so I didn't look like I was going to court. Charles will never tell that story. I'll tell it. I called Ty Cooper to get my clothes pressed because I'm like, I ain't got enough time to iron. He's like, take him to the laundromat and get them pressed. I'm like, what are you talking about? Now, this is somebody, I had 6 figures in the bank. But that's not what I came from. So teaching our youth, our young Black youth, who most of them are being raised by the women in the home, even if a man is there, because most of our community, the father and mother are not the father and mother of every child in that house. So the mom will fall into a protective role if we say, no, this is what a man needs. Well, that's not what my baby needs. So then she'll go to a man that's not in her house to say, teach my child. The same lesson that he's trying to teach, but I needed to come from you because we're too close here. How do you balance the education part to making the connection for them feeling comfortable enough to trust you at the same time?
That's that there is a lot of finesse to be able to do that, to be honest with you. And so part of the struggle for me is, the issue is I don't have the issue, mainly with the Black male. Like they often connect. We connect very quickly in most cases, because I am not only am I the first Black male educator, but just a solid Black male in general. In their life, consistent. And part of the other thing, the misnomer is, teacher of the year, cool Black teacher, as if I'm just going to allow you to come into the space and I'm going to lower expectation. No, when you come in, my expectations are high. We raise the bar, we raise the expectation, and to have you come to that level, the misnomer that our kids want to be lackadaisical, they need structure. And so to have that structure and that solidarity, and you got to be consistent every day with it,
Yes, indeed.
And so then that wins their trust and the connection. They're able to connect because they see the consistency.
They see the realness.
They see the realness, right?
That's one thing I noticed. It's like no matter who you are you real? Are you true?
That doesn't matter if admin come in or something. I don't have to switch up the flow because you're already getting the high expectation from day one. So I don't have to change gears or code switch when another teacher or somebody come in. No, this is what you're gonna get all the time. If I see you in the hall, and I have to check a behavior. It's because I've checked the behavior in the classroom. I don't have to. It's not performative based. It's the character and the value that I have across the board every time, every encounter that we have.
Yeah. Now speaking of that, and I think the connection there is, as you mentioned, like your journey and then them learning your journey. So tell us a little bit more about that background as far as what led you into wanting to be in the education field and educating our young people.
I don't oftentimes I don't get an opportunity to share this.
Okay.
And I think that's where this is where the conflict arises with many teachers who are not Black or brown. Because it's like, well, Pat, you're here, you're there. They call me Pat.
Okay.
You made it, but at what cost? And so for me, I grew up in Buckingham. My dad, he had 16 brothers and sisters. My grandparents had 17 children.
Big country family.
Oh yeah. And so, but all of them dropped out of school. Not only dropped out of school, all of them, majority of them are illiterate. They cannot read or write. And so I had a lot of first cousins, males. We have a lot of males in my family. And so I grew up having to read my dad his mail.
Wow.
Just only seeing him being able to just write his name in cursive and not knowing just basic literacy and basic fundamentals of just reading. I was in those. I had a speech impediment as a kid. I was in those. I spent in the literacy buildings in the chapter classes where you were taken out into the trailers to read and write. But as I grew up, I used to practice reading in the mirror so that I wouldn't stumble over my words or jumble my words. But what really led me into education is just that. I got tired of seeing, my family being impacted negatively by the lack of education. But my parent, he promoted my dad, my parents, they promoted education. And so I wanted to see like what it looked like to really address the whole child at every different level in all the disciplines, to see it like all work and come together for the whole of the child. And it was that struggle, of seeing all of my male, most of my male cousins, all are felons. All of them, they had children and left their children. My dad's a felon. My two older brothers are felons. They all quit school. So that was my drive, and that's what led me. And so being able to share that story with some of the students, it's just like wow. I shouldn't be. I get to be here. I get to do this work. I get to do this job because of that. And I'm privileged by that. Those kids are me. They are me. They are my cousins. They are my sister. All of that. I mean, I could go on, but that's the
appreciate that.
That's why I do what I do.
I really appreciate you saying that. Thanks, Joe. I just got asked this morning to come into the Piedmont region, Charlottesville, Greene County, Orange County, to help with the Christian athletes. Right. So Charlottesville is one of the places that was was brought to me. I'm thankful. I'm a felon. Right. I just was able to, God allowed me to take my experiences and turn them into legitimate business. He put the right people around me that knew I was going to listen to what they were saying. It might not have impacted the next person, but let me get to the point I'm trying to make. Because those jewels were around me, Charles being one of them, that sowed into my life, like after I looked like I'm established, right? I had a hustler's mindset up to a certain point, but in order to get to where I'm at now, I had to be willing to listen and learn. When it comes to what you do at the high school, and you see white teachers, young white females that may not have the most experience with Black males, how do you find the balance between advocating for those gentlemen and not being the one who is the obstruction for the learning inside the school, and then you get judged and then you get pushed out? How you doing, Dr. Pitts? Hope you're doing good somewhere.
Yeah, man. I mean, that is the challenge. You got 80% of teachers in this country are female or white female.
Yeah.
The Black male is only it's the average is less than 2%. of black males that are who are teachers, who are educators in this country. And part of the challenge is just that, one, I have, it's the same struggle. I have to help navigate that image with the students also, while having to protect it from myself as well. Having to navigate and having to dismiss the stereotype of being a black male myself amongst my colleagues.
Oh yeah.
Not only do the kids G-check me, the staff do too. I've been there for 8 years. Yeah. And my first year there, those teachers were asking me, do you have teaching license? Asking questions about my hair and different things of that nature, and having to overcome those stereotypes myself. So what I do is when I get in meetings, and I hear conversations leaning that way, I have the privilege and the opportunity to be able to correct and to bring insight. Be able to pull from my own experience and say, like, look, I was in that same position, growing up. I mean, guidance counselors didn't reach out to me, So I provide safe spaces for the students there. I have students that I connect with that I've never taught, and they come in my classroom every single day. I've never taught them. It's by word of mouth, and they trickle. I've had some of those same white teachers also tell me, though, why don't you just lock your door? Why do you allow them to keep coming in? Why don't you just lock your door and just let them come in when the bell ring? Yeah, so it's a never going, it's a never going battle.
I can imagine. So
to balance.
Yeah, so one of the things that stood out to me from the teacher town hall that you all did was that you emphasize that there are children. Because some people comment and they say those kids, or what I mean, stuff like that. But but you made sure that everybody knew, like, no, like, this is a public school,
right?
So they're the public's children. They're our children, right? So that, following what you just said, like, I have to ask, what do you see the need is, or the needs are? Because I can imagine, like, that you're a very regimented person. You know what I mean? Like probably goal oriented, I would imagine. So when you plan for a school day, and maybe a fight happened yesterday, and maybe kids say, all right, you wait till tomorrow. Maybe you heard something like that, and the image of our children in the city high school and whatnot. But like you said, you also experience some of the same prejudice that the kids are experiencing. Like, so what's your approach, like, to that, daily school environment?
You have the school environment. You also have, you have your own space as an educator. I try to have, my space be a safe space that is accepting to all, but it's also, I also try to keep it real. Like, I know sometimes we shun away from, if something happened, a big issue, our students are the first line of defense. And so, we spend that first few months, those first 2 or 3, those first 2 or 3 months really, like, building that relationship. And so when stuff happened, I asked the kids, and then we're able to, be able to use the relationship that we have built to be able to have conversation in the classroom, and it's no one size fit all approach to having the conversation, but it's also, you don't get a pass too just for being Black. We build in there accountability. We build in there, what some corrective action, what could we have done different, different things to really engage what happened and how do we move forward.
You ready?
Go ahead.
Have you ever met an unreachable child?
Oh my goodness, man. Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, let me first go. Before coming here, I worked at Elk Hill.
Okay.
And that's an alternative school,
right?
And the behaviors we would see. It was definitely more animated. It was fights every other day. We were all trained to break up fights. One principal we got, Dr. Hurd, black man, he accepted a position there. His first day on the job, he got his window, broken out. So like, a child, that's the goal. It's just like, you want to reach every kid in some way. We're leaving imprints, and you want to make a mark. You're not going to win them all. Some plant, some water, and then, they'll get increased as they go. But yeah, I've had students that come to my class, and I'll give you one. He's a student at an alternative placement now. That student came to my class, and he would not come into my class 4 months straight. Literally, he'd come in, you'll look around, kind of make an assessment. He'll go in the hall. 4 months straight would not come into. And I don't even know to this day even what clicked and made him eventually started coming in. But it wasn't until a co-teacher that I was working with wasn't there that day. So I think he came in like, let me see what's going on. A black male student. And then it was just like we clicked. And then immediately we started, we still started having a relationship. I've also had students that come to me and they just were not having it. They would transfer out of my class. And it's just like, man, like, and it's unfortunate, you win some, you lose some. Hopefully you win more than you lose. I get a few every year who transfer out. It's just like, and I think it's culturally based too. Some white, some black. But go ahead.
I was gonna say, it even sounds like if you're saying that teacher's aide or whoever it wasn't there, maybe that was the problem.
Yeah,
maybe they didn't feel comfortable around that person.
Okay, could be right. So many different factors. But my black female students, man, that's where the greatest work is for me. I'm gonna be honest with you. And back to a point where you were saying earlier about like not having black male presence.
Yes.
And so I don't know if sometimes like what the projection is, because the girls ask me, "You got 3 kids? Are they all by the same? Right. Are they all by the same woman?
Right.
Or do you got 3 different babies?" No, I have a wife. So I'm having to correct that. That conversation. And so there's so much I have to work tooth and nail to win my black female students.
Yeah, for sure. So we're gonna go ahead and hit a break and come right back to you. Cool. Yeah. And I know Razor ready to go now. He ready to go. Like, so y'all don't want to miss that. And then we definitely gonna get into Mr. Patterson's thoughts on like what's needed from the community, and from the community for the schools, and what's needed for particularly our young black students, but our students in general. So don't want to miss it. Much more with Mr. Patterson coming up next. IMHO Talk Show.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that, and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in this city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories, more people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue, especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay aligned with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in to In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
Go. IMHO Talk Show, Sir Charles Razor. We're in the booth in the building with none other than CHS Teacher of the Year, Mr. Joseph Patterson, aka Pat. Mr. Pat, like y'all are repping for Mr. Pat. I see it in the comments. I was telling him he's getting so much love here online.
Appreciate it.
Yes, indeed. Yes, and we appreciate it as well. You know, thank y'all for tuning in. So I'm going to kick it over to Razor because we were having of course this is a great conversation. Three, and we were talking even during the break, 3 black men getting together in a safe space
without it being a barbershop,
right? Without it being a barbershop, and we're broadcasting the conversation.
Yep.
Technically, we're it's no holds barred. We're because we care about our children, and we wanted to bring in Mr. Patterson. We all 3 are fathers, and what have you, and so this is very important, near and dear to all of us. So Razor.
All right, I'm gonna clean it up a little bit from what we talked about it earlier after I thought about it.
Appreciate
but that. My question being, okay, we were talking about the significance that you play for the black young male. I'm also known for being hard on the women on radio because I ask questions that need to be asked, in my humble opinion. But I also, people don't realize that I understand that the young lady who is confused and has no black male, for lack of a better word, ladies, leadership that she can respect.
Yep, father figure.
Ends up dating older men looking for that father figure, or grows up, gets pregnant, raising her child by herself, teaching ladies, I'm sorry, bad doctrine. Bad doctrine into her boys.
Or girl.
Who leads, it's more detrimental in the boy. because she can always follow and look at auntie or grandma or you know what I'm saying?
Right,
but
right.
we don't really see in our day the young boys out there with granddaddy busting wood, changing a tire, you know, getting what man skills, so to speak. So how difficult is it for you in your position to reach the young African-American female so that she respects you, so that she learns respect for men as she grows older? Because there are a lot of bitter women who teach young girls that you have to be tough or you're going to get run over. And then they perpetuate that out on our community into our children. And then you got children that won't listen to black men.
Okay.
Well, I agree with that. Let me add a caveat to it.
Absolutely.
Same question, but like Raisin and I know, because while I understand his perspective, like he knows like that I always try to bring him back to the center by saying, I feel like the black male is still ultimately at fault.
Okay.
And when I say ultimately, is because I believe that we have to perform better. And when I say perform, like just being men, being fathers, being husbands or boyfriends, whatever the case is. And then the women wouldn't have a problem trusting us. But we can't ask them to trust us till we get our stuff straight.
Do you know more? Pat, I love this. I'm glad y'all brought me back today. And Miss Max. This is the thing. You said it about your family.
Yes.
They were incarcerated. They're felons, right? I don't know. No, for lack of a better word, I'm gonna use a Trumpish issue.
Man, you really going deep.
The animals don't run the zoo. So if you're in the cage, you can't do but so much. Once you get that felony on you, you're limited to what you can do in normal standards. So at that point, our sisters have to step up. You know, it's not even about if the men can. Like they have a mark on their back. They're targeted at that point. So I agree with you.
The women need to be understanding.
They need to be understanding, and they're not, because when we get money as men, we figure out how we can take care of our family. When women get money, they decide what they ain't got to listen to no more. I said it. Boycott me. This ain't my show, no how.
All right, Mr. Patterson, you got to step in and break us up.
I know. I'll say this. You know, I think at the crux of our society, you know, when we look down the breakdown of the family, you know, I think the family is one of the things that keep the fabric of our society. You know, it's the glue. When you have the father, the male in his role, the woman in her role, that's what keeps it all together. Any type of deviation from that, it you know, this is what it ends up. This is, and what we see in society, this is the symptom of that.
Right.
You know, and so
but that's not popular nowadays.
It's right. It's not. It's not. And we see oftentimes in many of those cases as well, you know, those single mothers, they have to depend on the grandparents who overcompensate in ways. And that's assuming that sometimes the grandfather is there. You know, you'll have the single mother with the grandmother who have to overcompensate because the male is not there. And this, of course, this is a bigger conversation.
Right.
But we do see it seep into education.
Yeah.
I do have a much difficult time, you know, reaching the Black female students much more. You know, and it is a challenge because I get a lot of, you know, I do get pushed back a lot, you know, because again, the expectation is there's no, you know, it's equal opportunity, you know, the expectation is high. And this is the expectation. And I often get the, who are you? Who do you think you are? You're not my dad. You know, and combat it with all the other questions of, you know, hopefully you take care of your, you know, hopefully you take care of all of your kids and all of that. And that has to come from somewhere.
It comes from somewhere.
That comes from somewhere. And I know we're not gonna be able to solve it all right here on the radio, but it does. You know, I've had conversation. I mean, and not to really go into a whole lot of it, but you know, talking to some of their parents as well. Talking to some of the single mothers as well. And, you know, having to, you know, be harmless as a dove, you know, but wise as a serpent, and how you really address and how you really, you know, win people over with kindness.
Yeah, it's complex.
It is. It's a big challenge. And I have students even this year who, you know, they're a little rough around, but being consistent, you got to be consistent. You gotta don't deviate from the expectations that you set, and don't compromise, you know.
It's gotten bad with social media and whatnot. Is that what I notice is that a lot of times our sisters don't listen to you, even if they're not benefiting from it, unless you have receipts. So unless you make money, you have good education, or you're cute.
Right.
Women ain't gonna listen to no ugly man.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Let's keep it about the kid.
It is about the kid. Because at that point, well, think about it, Charles. If they're not gonna listen to an ugly man, that makes people present themselves on social media differently than what they are. It makes them go get enhancements, get eyelashes as long as a bat, lips, BB, all that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean,
hey, Mr. Patterson.
Somebody said something.
Yeah, so we have a Miss Williams that chimed in. Said Miss Williams said send him to D219.
Yeah.
And she will help.
Right. She said send the girls to D219.
Okay, the girls.
Okay. I was talking about that on me.
No. She's an educator at the school as well.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Yes, indeed. And Ms. Brown, thank y'all.
Oh yeah. And honestly, like we work together for real. Like we got each other's back. You know, Ms. Williams, Pam Brown. I mean, you know, they'll definitely tighten up the girls. And this is the thing though. The girls, they respect Miss Williams. They respect Charmaine. I mean, we have some of the same kids, and I've gone into her class, and you know, when she says something, it's like, oh, okay, yeah. But they'll give me a little bit more pushback.
But Pat,
you know?
How can we have a community that grows when they don't respect the men in their community? I don't know of another community that the male figures aren't respected. Yeah. And revered, and that community not suffer.
Right.
So that's what we're getting at.
Yeah,
like,
with
but
the
I don't know
education
how we
part.
Yeah.
How do we do that, y'all?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand.
Well, I think, to honest, I mean that this is a for real a different conversation that I mean, you know, maybe it's something I'd love to be a part of. But I mean, I do agree with Charles too, in the sense that, you know, if we got kids who are not if we got young girls who are not respecting the men, it's because there's adults that's not respecting men as well, the black men. And so there is I think back to your point too about like how, you know, the women are when they get their money, it's almost like,
don't get in trouble for it.
I know, but I do want to say, because and you did say about my family. Well, I'll take it to my family for one point. You know, at the time when I was serving in the military, I was in the military, and you know, when my brothers got incarcerated, you know, it immediately left the women in their lives with children, and they became immediately single mothers, you know, in their early 20s. My sister would eventually also become a single mother. You know, and so I've had firsthand experience, like kind of seeing and navigating how, you know, oftentimes, you know, them trying to build an empire, and then it's like I can see where they've had the struggle of having, like, okay, if I find somebody, am I gonna like take my crown off and turn it over to somebody who you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna now throw my crown off and they'll accept, you know, a king or you know, this joker to come in. It's just like, you know, is he going to carry it, or is he going to destroy everything and I've seen both though. I've seen it both happen in both realms where I've worked hard, got good credit, got everything set up, got everything established. Now I'm gonna come in, now I want to dominate, you know. So I think, I honestly think it's twofold, honestly, you know. There has to be give and take. There's no 50-50, you know. There's 100. You got to bring 100%.
From both sides.
From both sides, you got to bring it. That's what make, you know, my relationship with me and my wife. You know, our marriage. We'll celebrate 19 years in April. You know, that we've been married. That takes 100%. Both bringing it. You know, educating 3 black boys. I got 3 black boys, you know, that I'm educating, and so they have to see it. They have to see it lived out. We can't. My wife's an educator too at Jackson Via. She's a therapist. I'm a licensed therapist, LPC. So you know, they have to see, like, well, I can't be at school saying I'm saving the world, but my family is, you know, is in a disarray.
That's deep. Thank you.
You know, I mean, it's super challenging, man. I mean, you know, and we look at all these issues of we need education on all. We need institute, you know, in our community that's teaching relationship. We need all of that, like teaching relationship ethics, finance, economics, all of these different things to help us. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because I was about to ask you exactly that. I was going to ask because so many people point the finger at the school, right? But I'm curious on like how much is needed from the community, whether that be city council, like approving a budget for certain things, what have you. So I definitely want your take on that. Like would you hope for the school to do better,
right?
And what you hope for community members, parents to do better?
So I'll start with the home. Because I think it starts at home and then it spreads out. I think, and this is the issue, because we see the struggle that educating Black students, not just Black. I mean that's just the nature of the conversation, right? But majority of the students I do teach are Black.
That's interesting. I wouldn't have guessed that,
right?
Honestly.
Yeah. So part of it is what I'm offering at school should not be primary. This should be supplemental to what's happening at home.
Absolutely.
And you know what I'm saying? So we get them for a few hours a day, and we're leaving an imprint.
Yeah.
Hopefully, or we hear the adage, it takes a village. Well, the school shouldn't be the primary builder of that village. Right. We shouldn't be the primary promoter. What we're offering, it should be supplemental, so that if I have to call home, it's not a foreign language to I can't get Johnny to do the X, Y, and Z, and he won't listen. But first of all, don't nobody tell my child.
There
what
you
to
go.
Do, you know what I'm saying?
There you go.
So it's like it should be supplemental, and so we can't expect. We can't expect. If you want to take it political, we can't throw money at this situation and expect it to, that something's gonna. We can't expect the community to do what we're not willing to do.
Do y'all notice that when you gave the situation, I don't know if you inherently meant to do it or not, but the response that you gave about nobody telling Johnny what to do was coming from the mothers.
Oh yeah.
Going back to agreeing with Charles.
That proves your point.
Proves your point is that it does fall on the men's responsibility if he doesn't even know what his teachers' names are.
Oh my goodness.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I know guys, y'all might get upset at me right now.
That's okay.
But if you don't know your teachers, the students, your child's teachers, there's an issue.
Right.
In Orange County, I'm gonna be transparent.
Yeah.
I have a problem with the mother of my children, but I have the information where I know all my child's grades, all his teachers, even though I have to fight to be part of my child's life, right? And by all standards, I'm not a factor at all, right? Because everything is being blocked. But I know every grade he gets. I know all of his teachers. I know his sports. I got to do it from the gaze of from across the street so that there isn't a controversy, because most children will side with mom even when mom isn't always correct. You know what I'm saying? Which in turn may make him push away or gravitate to you because of the male figure in the household.
Oh yeah.
Thank you for
I mean that's the thing. That is the part. We say, the community, what can the community do? Right. Have the primaries, the ones who can. In the kids' life, show up to those school board meetings, show up to those community forums and those different things. Know the kids' teachers, know what bus they ride. You know what I'm saying? Just different. Know what route if they walk to school. Know their just the basics. You got to go from the simple to the complex. And we want the community to do great. The community thing, honestly, we just went through this whole back in November. I mean, Charlottesville we was hit pretty hard with all of the imagery of what it is to work at the city school, to do the reset and all this different stuff.
Where may I add, same stuff, if not more, happens in county schools
everywhere.
But for some reason, the city gets painted different. I just wanted to point that out.
And it's nationwide. It is a challenge to be an educator today. It's very different from even when we were in school. But I forgot where I was going with that.
I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're good. But the community in terms of the negativity that came from what happened at the school. We got the fights and all of this, and the community has jumped on the bandwagon of fueling this like negative image. And it's just like, man, that's why we had the public forum with the teachers.
Right.
And what many people don't know is that the teachers that were selected to be on there, I guess, weren't the teachers that were supposed to, that they thought, because many organizers of that event, they wanted us to go in there. There were people that pulled us aside before the event and was giving us all this prompting of what we were supposed to talk about. We was like, nah, we for the kids. We don't have an agenda. Well, talk about this. Talk about SROs. There's money in here. There's money in this audience. And we're like, we ain't thinking money's great. We need the resources, but what you can't throw money and to fix this issue,
right?
You know, and so that's why when we got it, we was like, we're gonna talk about our experience. We're not getting up here talking about anything negative, or you're not going to control, you know. And so even afterwards, people from the community they said, y'all don't realize that y'all saved the night. You had. This conversation was supposed to go in a completely different direction, but y'all saved the night because they got our perspective, boots on the ground.
Am I wrong? Because I know you said it takes a village, it takes a community. Am I wrong? Because I don't want the village and the community around my kids. Like, honestly, when I see people's agendas,
but we got to fix it. That's what we say. We got to fix the family.
But we ain't gonna fix it on my kids. Like, I'm being honest about that. Like,
I got you.
I understand it takes a village and a community, but when I see how you conduct yourself when you don't think nobody's watching, you can't be around my children. You know what I'm saying? So I try to keep my children around the people that they know and can trust.
Right.
Because if it ever comes a time that I have to say, no, don't listen to him publicly in front of somebody, I'm gonna do it.
Oh yeah.
I don't even give it a second card not to do that.
Yeah.
So if you are complaining about the school system and the teachers, and you do not go to any school board meetings or anybody, you're not sending somebody because you got to work.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I can't trust you with my legacy.
Right.
Oh, you know, that's just me.
Yeah.
Oh, no, yeah.
And Ms. Williams echoed you
about
Pat about she said money can't fix the systemic issue. She said that's the issue. No one wants to be in the village or the community for real. That's the root of the issue with Black families. No one wants anyone to say anything to their children, like you also alluded to.
Oh
earlier.
Yeah. Like we get to define what the village is. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the whole point. Like,
Explain
you know,
that.
like so like part of my village could be, you know, starts with me and mine. And it could be the people and who's in that circle, you know, grandparents, you know, church leaders, people in the civic community leaders, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking political or, you know, governmental. I'm talking about in how we have, you know, it's like
The development.
Right. We create that. We think about, we look at how different, you know, the Black church was in the 60s.
It was cornerstone.
Right. It was where we got our finance, you know, literacy from, our education. That's the Black church is what prompted, you know, the whole HBCU. You know, our preachers were involved, and they were community advocates, you know. So we had Institute. You know, we had Institute. And so I heard somebody say, you know, one time they said, you know, think about neighborhoods and whatever, you know, whatever village is, whatever. They said, no, we don't have no more neighborhoods. You know, all the neighbors have left and all we got left is hoods, you know. So it's like, where is the Institute in our Black communities? Whatever that village is, we created. We established it.
So going back to what you said earlier about the school not being the place you should be supplemental.
Right.
Maybe you are now. Maybe meeting the people where they are means that it is the school. I know you might not have looked at it that way, but based off of what you just now told me, it might not have been constructed in its origin to be that way.
Yeah.
But let's just say, okay, with everything that has happened, the school might be the closest thing to a safe space, because if you're raising your village with your parents, grandparents to build your children, your children are part of the school system. I'm seeing how your children act and I'm seeing where they're getting it from. Why would I not want that?
Right. So I think, I mean, you think of the school system, I think it is inadvertently is a part of our village, whether we want it or not. You know what I'm saying? Because it's the public school education. I mean, and that's the bigger conversation of, you think about segregation and desegregation, like, you know, the integration of schools in the 60s and how that has shifted and changed the dynamic of how our Black students are educated. That's the bigger conversation.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, prior to integration, they had Black principals and Black educators and Black. When the integration happened, tens of thousands of Black principals and educators were lost their job because why? They didn't want Black teachers and educators teaching their students.
Right. Integration is the worst thing that could have happened to our people. I'll say it for you. You know what I'm saying? Integration is the worst thing because we were supposed to integrate our money. We were never supposed to integrate our Black bodies. You know, so that's the reality of the situation. And even when somebody had put a post on my feed today about mixed children will fix racism and things of that nature.
Is that what they say?
And I publicly am going to say, I don't think that is the case because you still have, just because I'm of two different origins does not mean I have to turn my back on one or the other in order to survive. And I think that's where our children that are mixed, not just Black and white, but mixed in general, have the toughest time because society tells you that you have to choose.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You have to choose which one that you are. Or if, you know, let's say mom is Caucasian, dad is Black, more often than not, you see that Black male separate himself from his culture.
Yeah.
Because he wants to advance and be viewed a certain way. He doesn't want to be a certain stigma.
Right.
Even though that stigma may be what makes him happy inherently, he knows that it has a shelf life and can only go so far. And those are conversations that really end up in school because when you decide what groups that you're going to, let's say the majority of your students weren't Black, and you have to start pairing people together.
Yeah.
Well, that child that's being paired in the Black group that's non-Black has to go home, and if mom and dad ask them, what are you working on? And they say, well, just for lack of a better purpose, Jamal and whatever, the female, I don't want to nobody feel like I'm talking about their child, is part of my group. That parent might say, well, shoot, what is the education of the parents? Do they believe in? So it becomes about something else. Now that child can't even learn properly. They can't learn collectively together because of their outside influences.
Yeah, and Charmaine chimed in too to the point saying not with schools being pipelines to prison. Some schools aren't safe enough for Black and brown children, and I'm not talking about just physically safe. That's deep.
Man, you said a lot in it. Like a lot of points you made is many points that were made by by Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington, a lot of his education philosophy was like, you know, you kind of stay with the system, kind of work your way up, and kind of like you just assimilate and just kind of like do what you got to do, but assimilate. But
they cut his stuff off, right?
Yeah.
Didn't they castrate? I would have said it too.
Booker T. Washington.
I think so. I think they castrated that man so that they wouldn't mess with his daughter. I would say what you want me to say too.
But see, that was the issue between him and W.E.B. Du Bois.
Right.
See, he was like, nah, like, you know, we needed a more aggressive approach, and you know,
but he had all his tools though.
Who?
Go ahead, Pat. Don't worry about it. Go ahead, Pat.
I got. Did you know that Booker T. Washington's father was white? His father was white.
Okay. Yeah, I think I heard that.
You know, his mother was white. I mean, his mother was Black. Father was white. Booker T. Washington. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. And so that him and W.E.B. Du Bois had like it was a little bit of conflict with W.E.B. Du Bois had conflict with Booker T. Washington's philosophy, you know, and part of what you talk about the code switching, that's what W.E.B. Du Bois was saying. Like the black man have this two-ness about himself, this double consciousness. You have to be aware of who you are and code switch. You know,
we call that woke.
Right. He's two ideas, two thoughts, two theories that we have to be constantly mindful of.
Yeah, they code switch.
Right. And knowing how to like not, and I have to do it now, you know, with all of my paternal aunts and uncles being illiterate, you know, when I get around them, they like go on, you know, get on out here with all this proper stuff. You know, you got to talk the language, you know,
for sure.
And be able to navigate back and forth, you know, between the two.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by none other than City Teacher of the Year, Mr. Joseph Patterson. And thank y'all all for chiming in and being a part of this conversation. Look, hey, we even got Mr. Pitt online. What's up, Rashad? Rashad Pitt corrected us, not Booker T. White. He is absolutely right. It was George Washington Carver.
Okay,
thank you, Mr.
Pitt. Thank you.
That's what I got to corroborate.
Hey, Mr. Pitt, don't let this be the only time you start speaking to somebody when you want to correct somebody. I still call you out. And then let Charles block you online.
Yeah, but thank y'all. So I maybe like to kind of lead to wrapping up here. You mentioned, on how touchy of a subject, school resource officers are. But that and besides that, I'm curious on your take, because I think we kind of cut you off when you were in the middle of talking about what's needed at home versus the school.
Right.
So like when it comes to the school, and people saying, what are they doing over at that high school? Right. You know what I mean? Like that high school's off chains, out of control. Yeah. Like you being on the inside and you hear that, like, what do you see that's missing, that's needed?
So just the school resource officer, I'll say this. If we look at the history of school resource officer, we can point back to the 1950s, I guess the early 1950s, Fresno, California. What was the whole purpose of having school resource officers? Because of the racial integration, and it fights were happening and all this stuff. It evolved over the years. That's where we get the DARE. We had the DARE program. That was another way. Then there was it's called, the GREAT program. I forget what the acronym. So all of these were like different ways that it was just kind of brought about, but it started in the very beginning because of the divide between the races during the talks of integration. But in terms of you were saying, like you said, go back to the what can the community.
Well, no, I feel like we touched on community and families, but the schools, as far as if there's anything missing when it comes to resource in the school, or like the type of teacher administrator, or I even hear people talking about like what do you think about the cell phone ban, or like locking all the doors, and I've heard all that kind of stuff.
So I was on that district cell phone committee. I was on that. I mean, as well as Charmaine and Pam Brown from the comments there. Being on that cell phone committee, it turned into, I'm just going to be honest with you, it turned into, that committee showed where the racial divide was, just being on the cell phone committee. It was a conglomerate of, teachers from Beaufort and from Charlottesville High School. And just being around just being around the table and talking about our different perspectives as Black educators, we saw quickly how it's just like, whoa, wait a minute. One, we said, I'll tell you this, last year, I was my co-teacher, we worked together, Holly Faulkner. We teach Algebra 1. Many of the kids, when they come to the high school, I mean, man, it's what's 5 plus 3? We pulling out calculators, multiplication, No Child Left Behind, the Bush administration. That's how we get the SOLs and all that. But that,
I feel
we can get to that. But so the thing is like when we get the kids that come from Beaufort, we got to make $1 out of 15 cents. You know what I'm saying? And so the data that we were able to show from last year, from using the cell phone policy off in a way that phone zones and phone free zones. When they came into our class, the expectation was that you was to put your phone away. We were able to, out of about 63 kids, we had over 57 kids who passed the Algebra 1 SOL, the first SOL that they ever passed in their life.
Oh, wow.
And passed the class.
That's what it's about.
And so it's like, so I was on the cell phone committee. So I'm going to the committee. I'm like, man, look, like, if you just stay consistent for like 2 months straight, tell the kids, boom, 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 just be consistent. Because that's the problem that we were seeing. We were seeing that the teachers were not consistent with the policy.
Right.
And so, but it just opened up so much to where how Black educators educate and hold kids accountable and how we do things. We saw it was a vast difference. And so to one even told me, it was like, oh, well, of course you can do it. You're Black. They go. That's what a white teacher told me. It was like, oh, of course, of course the students will listen to you. You're black. And so then I have to educate, as if my skin is just going to help me self-actualize and cause the kids to fall into place. I'm like, no. I told you earlier, they're G-checking me. I got to go through. I got to get questioned on my credentials just to get to the starting level, just to earn the respect, and then build from there.
Yeah. So to make sure I'm clear, though, was your committee for the ban or against the ban?
My thing was no. Yeah, I don't think that having kids lock their phones up.
Okay.
From the time the plan states that from the time they cross the door sill.
Okay.
When they get off the bus or walk to school or drive or whatever, when they cross the door sill, the phone should be off and away for the entire day. And we was going to spend $30,000 on phone pouches to make it happen. And my question and my concern was, how do you get the phone in the bag in the first place? Who's going to regulate that? It's just insurmountable to think that you're going to control the classroom. The power's in the classroom with the teacher. And so we see, and I don't want to say, of course, we all have different, education philosophies and how we conduct our classroom. There's a lot of things that could be changed. We definitely need more teachers of color. Studies show that when students of color have more representation, that they perform well, even early on in the early years in the elementary level. We need more representation, because when a lot of people see me from the community, when I wear Charlottesville clothing and go out in the community, the number one question I always get, what do you coach?
Yeah, you already knew that.
That's the number one question. Shout out to the gym teachers. The coach is great.
Yeah, definitely.
We're more than just shooting the hoop or catching the ball or running. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So do you feel like salary is still the main culprit behind that, though? Because I feel like for so long, as the data shows, it's like a white female who probably has a husband who makes enough money. Job, salary based. So do we feel like that's still the problem? Teachers need to get paid more if you want to get.
I don't know any teacher that wouldn't take more money.
Right.
I definitely
is that the hiring problem though?
I think it can be, but it's just, man, it's so much that there's one student that I had. He's in college right now, becoming a teacher. Even when he went to the school to do his student teaching. White teachers questioned why was he in the building. He had a badge and everything. It was like, "Are you lost? Are you supposed to be here?" He said, "I'm a student." And it's like, so it's like it is money, but it's also, man, just being able to have voice and safe spaces. When we had Charmaine and I and Pam and many of us, Mr. Pitt was there, man. It was like, for me, he was the second black male administrator that I've had in 15 years of teaching. And so I was able to feel more emboldened, because it was only the black male administrators that I've had since I've been teaching that was able to look in and hone in, like, man, we got some here. Not because it's me, but it's like, man, this brother, let's get this brother, do. So I'm like, all right, feel more emboldened. Like, let's get up there and do.
That's right.
And it's like, it not only works for the students, but it's also worked for the educators.
Are the white teachers scared of the black kids?
There's some fear. Yeah.
Okay.
I'd be dishonest if I didn't say that there were some who was definitely afraid.
So if we use Charles' analogy by the fathers are the fathers are in charge of the community and the families and everything. I don't want you to answer this, right? It goes back to when people are applying for jobs, that this is a question, like, are you fearful of these people? Because that is one of the things that will come out when they get scared. Is say, these people don't listen. These people don't do, what I'm saying? So when I said these people, I was trying to make sure that everybody had a physical response to my words, because this could be how your children are being looked at.
It is how they're looked at.
Right. Well, I don't have no heaven or hell to put nobody inside. I didn't want to make it certain, but these are one of the questions that when we hire people, just saying that we need people doesn't mean that you bring in somebody that is going to cause more trouble.
Yeah.
And I know, because if you can't relate, you just can't relate. Like, you can't put me to do brain surgeon.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not completely ignorant,
Mm-hmm.
but that's just not my thing.
Mm-hmm.
If I know
Ms.
that
Brown mentioned
regardless of how well I did in school, but I'm fearful at the emotions or the responses of my students.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How effective of an educator can I truly be if I'm in survival mode while I'm in there?
Man, that you hit on something that this is what I always say. You got your HBCUs, you got your PWIs, predominantly white institution universities. They are not. Many of our educators are not prepared for that when they get to the school, and this is the thing. So it's like this is what I've been touting this for years. I said we talk about multicultural, we talk about multi-ethnical. We're multi-ethnical, but we're not multicultural. What that means is many of our teachers who are not Black or brown, they're getting their multicultural in real time from the kids. Their social circles are not multicultural.
Right.
Not even multi-ethnical. So it's like we're forced into these spaces. I mean, well, granted, most people in society, we navigate and we congregate with people of our same race. But there's some who you got to do a little bit more if you want to get exposure to other cultures.
Yeah.
We got the multi-ethnical down. At our schools, but the multicultural is where we have the struggle.
I think that's the divide. Why do we say Black and brown? I don't mean to cut you off.
No, you got.
But I'll make sure they hear me. I don't understand when we're trying to fix these problems of our children, why we as Black people always got to incorporate everybody else. I don't hear Afghanistan people referencing Black and brown to bring us in. I don't hear Hispanic people referencing Black and brown to bring us in. But it seems like in order for us to move the needle in everything that we do, we got to bring along somebody else. To make sure that we move, right? And the second that you say that, you get attacked, right? Because you're trying to cause division, right? So
that's a social construct. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But when you said it, it was like, man, why are we saying that?
I got you. I mean, and I can receive that. I mean, I got you. I mean, I think we oftentimes we do conflate. We conflate. It's almost like we say a minority. Like, what is a minority? Is it somebody who's is a midget a minority? Is it somebody who got a physical disability? And so I hear what you're saying. Instead of like clumping, our issues are specific, to black people.
And in fact is people hijack the Black plight for generations. It always happens.
Right.
But
I mean, even affirmative action, affirmative action, the number one recipient of affirmative action
We'll get him started.
No, you good. I'm gonna stay on track. But Ms. Williams points out a great point that I was going to mention to your point, Mr. Patterson. She said teacher preparation programs do not equip teachers with that training, and I think she's talking about being multicultural. And because I wanted your take on diversity training, quote unquote.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. All right. So we probably on the same page, because my thing is like I see Ms. Brown commented, just like most professions, if you're good at it, then you're passionate about it, and that makes it a calling,
right?
Like calling on your life. Like I have an issue, and I understand that if people need to know the right terminology or to be aware of things, that diversity training can help that. But I feel like that if a person doesn't have a heart to accept and treat people fairly, you can't train that.
Right. It goes back to what I was saying earlier, the multicultural piece. It's like, if we got students that come in and they're loud, I'm not threatened by Black students being loud. We get with our people, man. We loud, we laugh, and it's like, all right,
Hey, can I tell you something funny?
Oh, go ahead.
Because I've told Razor this before. So it wasn't until I traveled to Africa the way I understood that.
Yeah.
Because me being in Africa, I was like, damn, these people loud. like because I don't understand the language. So everybody sound like they're yelling at each other. And I'm like, it's probably how white people think we sound.
Yeah.
I'm
sure.
I'm being real. I'm being real.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, for real. That's my dad and my uncles, man. When they get, it's just it's loud.
Especially from the country.
Oh yeah, like everybody loud. But it's like you got to do the work though. The diversity training, all that a lot of that stuff is it's political. It checks the boxes. This is what we got to do. We said we did it. But you still walk around a school. I mean, do you even speak to a Black teacher? I mean, I've been there and have educators that will speak to me.
Yeah.
I mean. it's not personal, you know.
Yeah,
I mean, and I don't walk around with a chip on the shoulder. The thing is, though, we all are there for the goal. The goal is our kids.
Yeah.
And when you think about like community and you think about Charlottesville, you got a lot of people who move in from different areas.
Yeah.
And so the investment is not our kids. Because many are outsiders from our neighborhoods and from our community, from our areas. I mean, come from completely different states, whether they've traveled here by way of their spouses, you know, at UVA, or whether they've traveled here by way of UVA themselves or any other college, you know.
Yeah.
And so the investment is not like, you know, that's not the default. It's like,
yeah.
So, well, I think that when it comes, you just said it, because I was also looking at police officers that, you know, have the same problem. That when we talk about the CSOs, the officers inside
the SROs or
SROs.
the CSAs one.
Which one is inside the school?
We have CSAs now. They're not police officers. They're hired by the city. They just, you know.
Do they got handcuffs?
No. So you must be talking about the SROs, security resource officer.
Well, for our children, see how I didn't even know the difference between the two.
Oh.
So for our children, it's an officer. It's the law.
Right.
It's the feds. It's the ops.
Yeah.
It's the whatever they want to call it. Right.
Yeah.
So at that point, if I don't feel comfortable in the classroom,
right,
and truancy becomes my thing,
yeah,
and I go out into the hallway knowing that the opposition is out there, I'm going to carry a certain chip on my shoulder. So now I came to school. I might wanted to be there, might didn't want to be there,
right,
you know, but I get inside the classroom and I might feel that the teacher is treating me a certain way. Now I got to go outside here and deal with the officers of whatever form or fashion. And now I got to carry myself because I'm in survival mode.
Yeah.
Now I'm labeled as a child that is unteachable or unlearnable or whatever.
Right.
So that hamster wheel, because guess what? It's Monday. So guess what? I'm either not going to come to school Tuesday or I'm going to be here. You know, so it's kind of I think some of these kids are using the blessing of the buses not being there and bad weather as a reason for not coming to school. You know, so when we asked the city council, like, what are y'all doing about the schools and the buses and the things of these natures? Because the kids that aren't coming are our community, probably.
Right. Right.
You know what I'm saying? Which means they fall further and further behind. So now where do we grab that thread to start unraveling this? Because all I see is this yarn getting bigger.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, that is the issue with the public education. I mean, that is it. I'll just clarify the CSAs, the care safety assistants. I mean, most of them are Black men at our school, so they're not. I mean, they dress like how we are, you know. So their role is to establish a connection, relationship. They're very invested in the community. They know many of the kids, people. So it's like their job is to, you know, just to help regulate. They're not looked at as like I guess they can be looked at as punitive, but they don't have no real authority to, like, you know, suspend or nothing like that. It's really just, you know. So a lot of the students do connect with the CSAs, but there is imagery where I've heard white students just flat out say, like, you know, they look like security officers. They look like they're scary, intimidating, you know, or they're too
black.
They're too black. I mean, you know, dapping the kids up and all that.
Yeah.
I said, with the CSA, they're everybody. They're not just the CSAs for Black students. They're everybody's CSA.
Right.
You know, and so
do CSAs involved in PWIs?
What? Well,
like,
have they come
over at like some of these? I don't want to call private schools because I don't want them to come against the show. But they even have,
or like
those?
Western? Does Western Alma have?
Or Monticello or St. Anne's or do it? I mean, because there's certain things that are developed for Black baby daddy is developed for Black men.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Right. Even though the original unfit baby daddy don't look like us.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So there are certain things that I think that we think that we're helping because we can get financial assistance for that actually stifle the growth of what we're really trying to do. But nobody stands up, because if we don't allow this, then we don't get no money for nothing.
Right.
And that's one of the problems I have with the administration.
Yeah.
But that's a good question,
they
though.
sell their souls too much to me.
But I want to make sure we don't lose the question. Like, are you aware of if the talk about CSAs and SROs go on, like, for schools in general, or does it seem to be where there's higher Black density?
Yeah. I mean, it goes like what I was telling you earlier, the 1940s, early 1950s. Flint, Michigan, Fresno, California. Like that's where the whole thought and the idea of SRO come from.
But where does it continually go?
But there were brown people though.
What's that?
But it was more brown or black students. I think that's why.
Oh yeah,
okay, so
it
that answers your question.
It continues to be. You can look at a lot of the research with SROs. You will see that it continued to marginalize. I mean, it continued to be negative impact on
So we're willingly bringing racism into the schools.
Well,
huh? Well, how you gonna answer that? Okay, all right.
I was. It's hard to say you're bringing something, So
they just come on their own. No contracts were written. Nobody was contacted.
I'll say this. Some would argue that the public school system still has those roots in systemic racism.
Absolutely.
It's not bringing. It's already there.
Okay.
Some would argue. That's what I'm saying.
Got you.
Okay. We look at anybody. They look at it. You take most of your public schools. They'll tell you there's 2 or 3 schools in one. There's tracking. Kids get there's track. We got no child left behind. I mean, that's federally funded, but it's also schools have to perform in a certain way to continue to get federal funding. Standardized testing. That's when a lot of this was initiated. But some would argue the schools are already tracked.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
students that try to get into, advanced classes and all the, these different higher level classes, you're tracked when you get into elementary school.
Yeah,
and so you're just funneled in a certain way.
Yeah. And we definitely appreciate you hanging out with us. And I want to make sure that we get to a couple other topics that came up in this conversation. Like one being night school, because I know that you're an integral part of that.
Right.
And you may or may not know it, but there's some folks who don't see the benefit of it. So I want you to kind of let the people know what and who night school is for. But before you get to that though, to just finish up on what we were just talking about. When you look at even gifted classes and courses, some people say that even separates kids further in an unfair way, right? So I'm curious about those kind of programs. When you look at those and you look at the achievement and tied to that, I'm trying to lump it together. The pressure, because at one point we went from a country that trained to be producers and owners and manufacturers to where we're just workers, and the pressure was you got to go to college,
and
you got to get a job. While other countries were creating the business owners and the creators, what I mean, the developers. So I'm curious, is that pressure alleviated at all in school? You feel, or can kids go to community college, go to trade school, go to whatever? You don't have to go to college.
It's living the American dream. That's the whole fallacy. How does it look? We have this this mindset to think that every student they have to get this every student gotta go to college and we still, our educational system is still it's very similar to how it was during the Industrial Revolution, how it kind of we still have this assembly line approach and the bell ringing of all, and there's no really we need real education reform to give kids the opportunity to do those trades, to how many people go to college, they get a degree, and then they go to a workforce and don't even use the degree to their. I got my nephew, he graduated with he went to HBCU, graduated, right now he's got back to get his graduate. But he's it's he's looking at different opportunities that may not coincide with his degree. Many people are crossing over into education as teachers, but they went to school for something else. Entrepreneurs, you talk about people who are felons. I mean, they got to fight tooth and nail to try to come back into society to get assimilated back in. If they don't come in as an entrepreneur, and small businesses, trucking, different things and different ways to but we don't hear about that. Even military. I did military. Whatever people's position is on that, but it's still it's an option.
It's an option.
And so being able to present different options to students instead of tracking them, having them take class in high school that is not going to be meaningful. It's like I always say. Of course, I teach math. At the end of, I don't remember a lesson that teachers taught me in high school. I remember how they made me feel. These kids, they're not going to leave remembering the Pythagorean theorem.
Right,
you know,
right.
I mean, they're not going to know slope intercept on. If so, they can Google it. You know, so we're putting.
I don't know what you talking about.
You know, but it's like the thing is though, how did I make them fit? What was the imprint? You know, night school is one of those alternative. I don't want to use the word alternative. It's another attempt and a way to educate our kids. You know, away from the stigma. It's a smaller setting. A lot of kids can function well at a school of 1,500 kids. Right. All these moving parts, all these different classes. It's 3 hours a day, 3:45 to 6:45. It's a way where people think they're like night school was created because we had fights and all that stuff. No, this talk was been in the works. The conversation was been in the works so that it can offer ways where the kids another way. You think about a senior who only got a few credits that they need to take. You know, could they tap into night school being on this online platform? Being able to like accelerate classes. Work during the day and come do your class at night. Like this whole night school is supposed to be comprehensive. That eventually it'll be literacy, financial literacy, educational literacy
that's what we need.
to help parents. That they will come.
Oh, that's awesome.
Simultaneously to get learn even like programming.
You said it's in person and online options?
No, so like the program that they do the education on, it's an online platform where the teachers just facilitate. Where they can like kind of log in, they can do it from. And so Charmaine, she works at the night school. A few others. Melvin Grady, he works at night school.
That's awesome. Shout him out.
I mean, we work the shift, and then we're going to give some more time and hours to Holly Faulkner. She's at night school. And we we love
y'all.
it.
Appreciate y'all, man. Mr. Patterson, man, you got to come back. Man, this was awesome. This was awesome, bro. But like we only got 1 minute left. But even if you took 30 seconds, I want you to close because I think people appreciate you being here today. And I want like the community is listening.
Right.
So as you prepare to go back to school tomorrow, like what would be your closing word to the Charlottesville community?
Yeah, my thing is connection is key. There's no one size fit all approach to any of our students. Receive the students from a fresh perspective. Don't use the negative stereotypes and the stigma of whatever. Give the kids a try. Believe in the kids, and that's my thing. Like give them hope. You got to give it to them. Don't just say it to them. You got to give them hope and inspire just believe in them and everybody got to do their part. Everybody. That's right. And don't feed into the negative, stigma that all the naysayers.
That's right.
Thank y'all so much. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Well done.
Yes, indeed.
Well done.
Razor, Sir Charles, shouts out to Miss Mac, shouts out to you, family member. You can run it back. I am HO Talk Show online, and we'll see you next time. Peace. Be a blessing.
I am HO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.